Okay.
Hello. Oh, Bob, you've gone. Bob is shy. Bob is shy.
Bye,
Yeah. Bob doesn't want to be recorded, so that's
That
I
was like
I
I
think
explained before a few minutes because my internet is slowly today and the camera make the problem.
oh, okay. So it's,
so. Yeah,
so
I told
so
him.
you're not looking your best. I do appreciate that. So,
Can I turn my video off then, Thomas?
so, yeah, it's us too. I'm afraid the face of Intenga. So the faces of Intenga.
Yes, of
Yes.
course.
Yes. Well, today in Intengo, we are going to be talking about how to prepare to find the perfect job. So first, we'll talk about. We've talked about job descriptions, how to make a job description as far as a business perspective. We've talked about how to apply for jobs. We've talked about a lot of different things. But today I want to focus on like how to find a good job and not over apply for jobs, which means to apply for too many jobs. Okay. So yes, so what we'll do is we will go to slide number 2 here. Okay, good. So first, think of your long-term goal. That's the first and main thing that you want to do is where do you see yourself working now? Where do you see yourself working in 5 years, in 10 years? Is this job going to help you get there, basically? Okay. So Bob, would you like to read?
Yes, of course.
All right, you can read this.
Think of your long-term goal. We all know how long it can take to find a job and the perfect one at that. Today, I want to give you some tips on how to find a job, but better than ever. Hopefully, you can find a job faster and with less stress. So today, we'll take a look at some important steps you should look at before applying for a job.
All right. So good. So yes, this is our first thought. All right. So so we're going to start with a whole bunch of different tips and different advice for you. So Ken, could you read this slide for us?
Okay. Say no to typos. When applying to a job, you most likely turn in a cover letter and or resume, CV. These should be written correct and even checked over by a friend, family member. If there are typos, words written incorrectly, this is a first bad impression. A company might turn you down because of lack of detail, etc.
Okay. So this is probably, I bet we'll find a typo of mine today, as always, because we're humans. But in this case, it's a very serious situation. If you want to be taken seriously, you should do everything perfectly, okay? So that means when you write your CV or resume, your cover letter, everything should be perfect, okay? And as I've written here, you should have it checked by a friend or family member. It's just because you are going to read something very quickly and you might, miss a mistake. Whereas someone else who didn't write it will see it and might say, oh, well, I don't know if I would say it like that, maybe say it like this, or, they can help you as well. So did you heard of the word typo before?
Yes, I always make typos. So, but nowadays technology, my computer software check my spellings. It's pretty useful actually.
I think you need to be quite careful with spell check with Word or other words, because particularly if you type fairly fast, it's quite easy that you just type, because it autocorrects some of the words, doesn't it? And then it's quite easy to have the completely wrong word there, and so you always have to double check. I actually would go further than family and friends. If you're serious about finding a job, and if you're not completely broke, I would say find somebody who can professional check it, because it's your life, it's your job, it's going to last you a long time, it's worth it. And one other thing about applying for a job with a resume letter, because they're different ways. Some are application forms, some are resume letters. Try to be relevant to the job. Nobody, you know, if you're applying as a marketing manager, nobody's interested that you worked in a pub. Really, nobody. They're just not, you know, you need to, your application needs to be appropriate to the job. So I would always advise people to at least go on their website if they have one. If you can, I would even go around the place if it's local. And before I even write an application, I applied for the final job I did in psychiatry, and I actually before I even applied, I actually went around and met the people. That's not always appropriate. You have to be, you know, this works quite well in psychiatry. Probably not so well in engineering or other fields, or in IT. It might not be so appropriate. But you know, be quite proactive with a job, and because when you go to the place, when you apply, you have a much better idea what you want to write as well. So don't try. My main point is don't try to be irrelevant.
And we will see that same point later. So thanks, Thomas.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It just helps reinforce that what I've done today is correct, and it's good. So, good. Thomas, do you feel like reading, or what?
Let Bob read.
Okay.
I read the next one.
Oh yes, of course. I like to read.
He's not showing you. Yeah, sorry.
No, addressing the company. When applying for a job, it's important to address your cover letter to this specific company. If you don't, it's not good. This also indicates a lack of detail on your part. Not good when looking for a job. If you have the opportunity to turn in something 100% correctly and you don't, it doesn't look good.
So I'm not sure if this is exactly, if you understand exactly what I'm looking for. Basically, what I was going for is, if you have all the information in the world, okay, and say how to write the perfect resume, CV, cover letter, whatever, you've got friends, you've got family, you've got ex-coworkers probably, you have people who have this knowledge. If you don't take advantage of that, then it doesn't look like you're serious for the position. And so here at the end where it says, you have the opportunity to turn in something that it is 100% correct. The grammar, the structure, the words, the spelling, everything. Also in the complete format, okay? In the correct format. And so if you don't, it's like, okay, really this person didn't put a lot of effort into this. And so how much effort are we really going to put towards them in order to hire them? So Thomas is going to have to make this decision quickly if he's going to hire someone to for helping out. So let's see here. Next, right? So basically make sure that everything is correct, okay? The next one, money matters. Thomas, you said you wanted to read this?
Yeah, money matters.
Okay.
Some job descriptions won't have a salary listed. Most candidates believe that based on their work history, they will be paid correctly. However, it is not a high-up job. The salary might be lower than expected. Companies might not choose you for an interview because you're too qualified for the job. I think that comes back to what I said early on, isn't it? Make your job application and your experience relevant to the job. You know, if there's a job as an administrator and you were a manager or a CEO in a big company, then yeah, you're probably not going to get that, are you? Because they think, well, we can't afford. I mean, it would be lovely to have somebody so highly qualified, but we can't afford that.
And that's exactly what this is talking about. So, and you know, for resumes in the United States, at least we have like the title, the dates, and that kind of thing. And then we have like a description of what we did. So I always had like 3 or 4 points depending on, you know, what it was. And so what you want to do is like those points of your job, you want it to reflect something that's similar that you could do or would do in this job you're applying for. So they know it's relevant, like Thomas is saying. All right, good. There's a lot of information today, so I'm going to keep going with this.
Can I
yeah.
have one question? Can I have one
Yes,
question?
of course. I'm sorry. Yes.
The very last line, because you are too qualified for the job. What does it mean, too qualified?
You're overqualified. Like Thomas said, maybe you were a CEO at a company, but you're applying for like a kind of an average job, let's say. Like you're overqualified for this job. You're too qualified.
So maybe I expect to that higher position than how can I say the real kind of qualification or something.
Not necessarily, because sometimes what happens is that, I don't know, the company might have closed and you're in an area where it's really difficult to find a job, but you know, you're quite keen to work because you quite like working, and also you need some money. You might not be able in the area you live in, you might not be able to get another CEO post or another really important post. So you might go for a post that you think, well, that's something I can do, and but you're overqualified. You have too many qualifications. You've done a too high-powered job before, and the company would be worried, I think, that you know, you'll be trouble. You know, you might be trouble in the future, or you might want too much money or whatever. So they probably wouldn't employ you. That's why it's important to turn it down a bit if you were a CEO, you know, call it something else or whatever.
Exactly. I was just going to ask you that. So when you're in that kind of position, you would say, oh, I was like head of something, or, you know, kind of, as Thomas said, dumb it down, which means basically use simpler words, don't use quite so specific words that say, I was a CEO, I, you know, ran a company. Because then later, too, the CEO of that company might think, oh, I wonder if there's competition here. What's going on? Does he want my job? Or is he going to undermine me and try to boss people around and tell them what to do? So, yeah, it could be some negative things there.
Right. Being humble, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good word. You know, just, I mean, you know, you can take it even further. You know, you might apply for a cleaner's job, and you know,
just
and
not put on the application
but the application you put that you know, you were a senior administrator. So yeah, it has to be appropriate to your job. You know, because if you were a senior administrator and you now want to do cleaning, I suspect you might not be a good cleaner. So
maybe you just want to change your careers. I don't know. Or you
could be, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah. You have to, there's like a fine line kind of there, but you don't really know where the fine line is because
Absolutely.
it depends.
Yeah, very difficult.
So, absolutely. So now we'll go on to follow directions. Was that Ken or was that Bob?
I think it's Ken, yeah.
I think it's Ken.
Yes, I think so. And most of us have applied for jobs. It's not that hard, but if you don't do it correctly, it's not going to be good for you. If the job description has specific details, follow them. Just because you think something might be easier doesn't mean you should do it. This also reflects your work ethic.
So the main idea between this slide was if they say, okay, you know, send us your resume, CV, and cover letter to this email. And you're like, well, I have a friend that works there. I'll send it to my friend, and my friend can give it to the HR people. That's not what they want. You know, you don't want to kind of be different in that aspect. Just follow the rules. It's not that hard. Just do it.
Yes, and if it comes with a set of questions,
of course,
you must answer them. You must answer them appropriately. And the other thing, you're probably mentioning later, so but
that's okay.
Some jobs, well, most jobs probably come with a job description. You need to answer. You need to look at the job descriptions in order to answer any application form. And if there isn't an application form, but you have a job description, make sure you cover all the points and that you can actually do the job. Otherwise, you won't get it. I mean, you won't get an interview. I mean, let's remember we're doing this part in order to get an interview. You know, that's the whole purpose of filling in application forms, writing a resume. That's the first step, really, to get the interview.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry, I'm going on a bit.
Fine.
I'm going on a bit today.
It's good. It's good because I don't have the questions. Well, I didn't think about asking questions because sometimes people do, sometimes don't. So, all right.
No problem.
Yes.
Okay.
This is very experienced tips of the Thomas.
Everything, I think.
He's
So.
not always, but yes, his experience, of course, this is true.
It's only because I've read hundreds of application forms.
And he knows what to look for.
And I can tell you there's nothing worse than an application form where people just don't answer the simplest of questions, and you just can't give them an interview because you just think that's just so shoddy. It's really worth making the effort. And also, when a potential employee comes in to the interview, shortly before, and you usually read the application form again, and already it's the first impression thing that Becky was talking about earlier on. It's so important. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, you're fine. You just use phrases that I think are important for them to know. To be shoddy equals to be bad. It's not, to be shoddy is like, well, it's missing this, but then they have too much information here and not enough here, and it's not good. So.
Isn't it shoddy, like with double D?
Oh, wait a second. Did it actually told me that it was incorrect, and I've never really spelled shoddy before.
Yeah, that's how I would
You're right,
spell.
Thomas. Weird. Thomas gets 1 point today. Thomas wins the spelling contest. I've never seen it written before. I just heard it said. All right. Well, welcome to native language. So,
American T sometimes pronounced like T, shoddy.
Exactly. So,
Shoddy.
Shoddy.
Shoddy sounds like a name, doesn't it? Hey, Shoddy, how are you?
I don't know about that one, Thomas, but.
All right then. Okay. I can't but try.
You can try. You can do whatever you want. It is your class, kind of. So CV and resume info. I think we're back to Bob, unless Thomas, you want to jump in.
Yes, Bob.
Bob is fine.
CV resume info. Sometimes we will be unemployed for a period of time. During an interview or in the cover letter, you should explain why. If you didn't work for at least 6 months or don't have a job listed on your CV resume, it will need to be explained.
So some companies might directly ask you, oh, I see you weren't working from this time period to this time period, and then they'll ask you. So you do have to be prepared at least to answer. Now, this next has more information about this. So actually the next couple. So I'd like to read these and then we can comment, okay? Unless, Thomas, you have a very important point.
No. I'll make my point after this, I think.
Okay. Good. So Ken, is it Ken's turn to read them?
Yeah. Come on, Ken.
Okay. A resume info. There are many reasons why people don't have job for a specific amount of time, but you don't have to explain why if you don't want to. If you want to hide your unemployment period, you can. Not use specific dates. Instead of saying August 2012 to September 2015, you can use 2012 to 2015. Okay.
It's
hiding.
Yeah, it's really tricky, that one, because you do look through it. I mean, there isn't a good answer for this, really, I think. If you say, well, I took some time out traveling, for example, that's the most classic one, isn't it? And you kind of know where, if you have age discrimination comes in a little bit there. It does happen that people, I suppose, leave a job to go traveling at the age of 50, but it's quite unusual.
Yeah.
So if somebody, you know, if you're 20, 21, 22, and you're telling me, well, I took a year of traveling, I'll probably believe you. So it's circumstantial, because the second you start lying,
everything changes.
well, no, you detect it. You can
Yeah,
tell.
exactly.
That's the
Your
problem.
voice.
Your voice changes. I mean, you might have rehearsed it even, but
The way
it's,
you look at someone, the way you
yeah.
speak, and the gestures. I mean, in general,
But a
you
good
will know it.
answer is if a company went bust, for example, and you've been unemployed for half a year, is to just say that. I mean, the company, unfortunately, you know, when you wouldn't say went bust, but you know, and I lost my job at that time. You know, what you have to do in that time, I think it's much more important what you do with that time when you're unemployed. So, for example, if you just sit at home and watch TV for half a year, that's not very good. If, however, you decide to do vocational training, or you're going to go into maybe learning a language, for example, like we do here, or you know, you use that time productively, or maybe there was a point in your last job where you were particularly not so good and you're trying to improve that point. Those things I would see, if I'd interview you, I would see them as positive, as long as it's relevant to your job, of course.
Yes. Well,
So,
that brings me to my next
so
slide.
yeah, okay.
No, you can continue, Thomas, if you want.
Okay, resume info. Another way to be discreet about employment dates is to put the date at the end of the job title with a smaller font. Okay, this way the information is there, but it isn't what catches your eye immediately. A third way to do this is not to add all your relevant jobs. You can mention that you worked, but the job isn't related to this one, so you don't add it. Yeah.
So, to not add your irrelevant jobs is what it should be. So there's my mistake of the day. We'll just add that. And so basically, this is kind of what Thomas was saying. You know, don't add irrelevant things, and it's probably on irrelevant. Okay, well, that was the best I could do. If we go to the next slide, there is more information. So if we continue, Bob.
Oh, yes.
I think this is the last one with this.
Read some info. By not adding a job, you can say where you were working without giving specific details. Also, when asked about gaps on your CV resume, you can say what you did instead of working. You had a child, caring for a parent, family member, went back to school, took a course.
Yep, so Thomas and I are on the same page today as far as information. You know, it's okay if you have a gap in your CV. If you don't want to say it because of something, okay, that's fine. My husband is a really reserved person. I don't know why, but he doesn't want everyone to know everything about his life. Okay, that's fine. So, I mean, he might be one of those people that doesn't want to say why he wasn't working. But as Thomas said, as long as you're being productive, why not? So the company closed, not your fault. You know, things like that. There's no problem in saying, well, they closed at my age. It's a little bit more difficult to maybe find what I want to do. You know, it's kind of a big point in your life as well. It happened to my aunt a couple of years ago. She was let go from her position because of change of bosses, and she was making so much money they decided to let her go. So now she's in her 50s with no job. What do you do then? You look for a job that you actually want to do. So she's been taking courses. She got a couple jobs and see what she thought. So it's okay. But yeah, this is just if you don't want to tell people why you weren't working. So questions, comments? Okay. I knew there was one more. All right, so Ken, I think this is the last one about the resume info. Okay.
Okay. Overall, There are things you can do that hide these gaps if you want. Sometimes it's best to be honest. It really depends on your situation. It could be that you needed some time off because you were stressed at your job, your last job, etc. Whatever you feel comfortable with is what you should do.
Mm-hmm. So maybe yeah, no, go ahead, Thomas.
I think there's some rules though that one has to follow. So for example, to say I wasn't working for the, I stopped my last job because I hated my boss is probably not a good idea to say. I was just feeling so depressed. I mean, I know that people do get depressed and there's mobbing at work and all sorts of things. Personally, I wouldn't put, even though that might be true and it was distressing. And unfortunately, we are still in an era where mental health is just not acknowledged by employers. And that's a real shame because, if you actually help employees through difficult times, I think they'll get quite a good deal out of it. But it's not. The general rule is, unfortunately, that's not the case. I wish it was, and I wish there was more support in particularly big companies for, they call it burnout. Burnout isn't really a psychiatric diagnosis for people. So just in case you ever, when people say, well, I stopped work because of burnout, it's usually because they're actually depressed. They get so bored with their job or something, or they get mobbed by the boss, they get bullied. Sorry, I'm using the German word here. Get bullied by their boss or somebody else. So, but these are all kind of things that I wouldn't mention for the gap. Yeah.
There's a phrase that Thomas used to be burned out. I would say to be burned out. You said it a little differently. There's also the phrase of burning the candle at both ends. So you're basically, until you can't do anything, that you're so crazy and that you can't concentrate. So yeah, it's not a good situation. Like Thomas said, I'd never quit my job with Integra because my boss is fine. I mean, he's cool actually. So
oh, good. I'm glad about that.
Oh, my boss is terrible. No, but it's that, watch what you say, and that is coming up here. We have all of this. I don't know. It's somewhere in here. But yeah, so just be careful with how you say it and how you word. You can choose your words carefully enough to. It's kind of like when Thomas was explaining about not hiring someone and that, well, you kind of didn't do this well enough, or was it the end of the review, something like that. I don't know, something about the jobs a couple classes ago, and that you couldn't say anything bad with the NHS. And you couldn't say anything really negative. Was it? It was like the post-job interview or something.
You're not allowed to give negative feedback after interviews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, it's kind of trying to explain the situation without like blaming someone basically, and say it was his fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Of course, it's not my fault. So yeah, you can say, well, I didn't really get along with my colleagues. It was a really difficult situation to go to every day, and I just decided it was best for me to leave. Something like that. It's pretty neutral. You're not blaming them. You're not blaming yourself. It didn't work out. So
exactly.
Perfect. Well, who I don't know, where are we now? Whose turn is it to read?
Bob's
turn to read. Of course it's Bob's
turn.
Let's go.
Under qualified. Be careful to apply to jobs that are appropriate for you. You could be eliminated from the application process for having too much or too little experience. If you lack a few points that are in the job description, that's okay, but don't think you have more experience than you do.
I think what happens a lot of times is that people think, I'd be perfect for this job because I want this job. But just because you want it doesn't mean you're actually going to be good at it. So you have to be rational with yourself as well.
Yes,
Anything?
there are so many factors, aren't there? Because you can't just go by obviously what you can and can't do, but you also have to look at what the job market is offering. You know, that is constantly changing. You know, jobs that we did, I don't know, 50 years ago probably now don't exist anymore. You know, soon we won't need secretaries anymore because you have software that where you can talk directly into the computer and it'll just type it for you. All sorts of things are changing. I mean, soon, who knows, we might have driverless cars, and you don't have taxi drivers anymore. I think
Or bus drivers,
or bus drivers. Uber, I think, are already experimenting with sort of having driverless cars. So yeah. So look at the job market, train up for it, and within also when you have a job within your own company, have a look at what's available, what's changing. In Germany, we are always about, I'd say, somewhere between 2 and 4 years behind, which is quite good because, of course, America and the UK, and I would imagine Japan as well, are very progressive. So I always have, when I do things like search engine optimization, which is my job here, I'm always a little bit ahead because I obviously read the American and English kind of stuff. So I know what's going on. So none of the companies, as far as I know, are doing what I'm doing, and that's always gives me the edge. So it's good to look at, particularly with innovative kind of stuff. It's really good to look at the US and the UK as well. I think they are quite progressive in many areas. And Japan, I think, China as well. China is very, very progressive.
The only thing with you being a little bit ahead of everybody else is that some people will be like, whoa, well, that's so strange. What, class is online in a virtual classroom? What is that? Or I have people now, one of my jobs is on the telephone, and people think, on the telephone? How can you teach English on the telephone? I'm like, the company has been around for 30 years. Like 30 years ago, there wasn't internet. So, they had to think of something, and it had to be, they were dynamic. It's you can pick your own day, your time schedule, how long you want the class to be, and people think this is so modern, and I'm like, this is so old.
Yes.
Modern is online, virtual classrooms, Skype kind of things, platforms.
Even Skype is quite out of date.
Kind of, yeah. There's so many new platforms. I mean, with everything. I mean, we've done Google Hangouts, we've done Intengo before, and with the differences between, now and from before, there's huge differences. So
I think online course is much popular. It was still minor here, but the biggest cram school chain company. I don't know, the cram school is available in Germany or some other countries, but for those who fail to the university exam, they study that cram school for 1 year or something. But that they started a YouTube channel, to maybe they are shifting to online class, not actual class in the classroom. So I think online studies it becoming more popular. Yeah.
I think it's the future. Honestly, it's everything will be about convenience. Let's talk about being social and antisocial at the same time. This is the most perfect thing for that. We're in a group. However, I'm actually alone. It's like when you're in a car and the car is moving, but are you technically moving or are you not moving because you're sitting in the car? But however, the thing that you're sitting in is moving. So, it's kind of that aspect of two things are happening at the same time. We're being social, but
of course, we have 3 more lessons out of this if you wanted to, globalization and one of Marcos' favorite subjects, but it's true, isn't it? I mean, when you do classes online, you have the whole world competing against each other. It's not Hanover, where I am, where a few companies compete each other. I can compete with that. I can't compete with, I don't know, teachers sitting in Thailand and charging $5 an hour. I can't compete with that. And if that's that, so it's kind of like for our business, the internet made us because of the search engine stuff and whatever, and it probably will also kill us. Hopefully not too soon, but
Not me.
I don't know, Becky, because if you look at Preply, for example, which is another online thing, and with online teachers, ever look what they charge? It's quite frightening. Some of the
What's it called?
Preply. You should be on that anyway.
Okay, thanks, Thomas.
I put it here. I think it's like this. Might be .com or whatever. I think it's .com. So that's another. They're huge, and they have a very, very, very powerful website that also works in Germany. They actually managed to overtake me in Hanover. So even though they're an international site, and it's quite an achievement. So there's certainly, in terms of our competition, something to watch out for.
I'm not going to go to competition, Thomas. But
No. I know you won't. But So, but it's 2:00. My God, how did that happen?
yeah, well, we did start a little bit late. I do have some more information on these slides, but they're just about things that we've reviewed in the past about how to prepare for the interview and that kind of thing. So we're not really missing any huge points.
Okay.
So yeah, so very good. Well, I also need to go. So I hope everyone has a great day. And what are we doing on Wednesday? It was something a little bit more fun than this, I think.
I think this was fun.
Well, it's always fun, but I can't remember business idioms, if I remember.
Oh, great!
Correctly.
I don't know
That'll
any.
be fun.
I don't know any business idioms, so that will
You
be.
only know idioms, Thomas. Thomas only speaks idioms, so that's why I have to write everything. So, all right, well, great. We'll see you on Wednesday at our normal time, 3:00.
I won't be there on Wednesday. So.
Okay, so no recording.
Yes, because I'm meeting somebody at the new potential employee, so I have to meet her. All right then.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll see everyone soon. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.